What's good, y'all? You already know what it is, baby. This is T Paris, aka the Young Marvin Gaye. This rap shit, most original, most creative, most in tune with the times, and I'm sort of like your inspiration. And this is P's Perspective. But let's not waste no time. Let's get right into it, man. Happy New Year. I want to send a prosperous blessing to everybody out there tuning in.
Bless.
This is our first episode this year. Like I told y'all before, we're going to do bigger. We're going to do better. I want to apologize. I ain't got the shirt and tie on. I got my New York Yankee apparel on. You know, I'm no longer supporting the New York Knicks. But we're going to get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
To start this one off, I want to let y'all know we got some new, exciting ways to go about expressing ourselves this year. Number one, we're going to bring some guests on here. Because I thought last year, you know, my insight was beautiful, was dope, it was passionate. But I want to get some more of the insight and information from other people out there who've been paying attention and who I also look up to and idolize and, you know, kind of like admire some of their insight and the way they go about expressing themselves. The last thing that I want to say is anybody who wants to send a topic or you have something that you would like to get on off our roundtable discussion and broadcast, T Paris Music Group 1 at Gmail, or you can leave your comment right there on Facebook, or you can leave it on YouTube. But without further ado, I want to get into our first guest at the top of the new year. I'm going to let him introduce himself. I just want to let y'all know this is somebody that I look up to, somebody I admire, it's somebody I grew with, somebody from my hometown, and it's only right that we start right here in Sugar Hill. Go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Bless. I come in the name of Tony Christ, youth mentor, spoken word poet, educator, writer, etc.
Etc., etc. Well, let's get right into the name first and foremost. You said your name is Tony Christ. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your name and how you got your name?
The name Tony Christ is actually more of an acronym. Actually, the term Christ comes from the term Christ is. Christ is more of, it symbolizes a children homeless running in the streets. It is symbolized inner city savior because it represents that voice of the people who are not heard. Hence the voice of the voiceless. Actually, the term Christ is came to me during my dream state, during my REM state one night when I was incarcerated. And as a result of that, I just kept that name because I'm a type of person that I really believe in my dreams. I follow my dreams. So now when I go with that name, Christ is in my head, and with that with the acronym, I kind of just had to just go with it because I'm controlled. My whole being in reality is controlled by, I don't like to give it names and terms because every time we try to name something, we give it limitations. So I would have to say something beyond me, something deeper than my reality chose that for me, so hence I kept the name Tony Christ.
Christ. For those, you know, who might be religious, you know, Christ is something that came from the Christian religion. Let me ask you, are you religious?
Oh, no, not at all. Not religious. I understand the concept of religion, of the etymology of the term religion comes from the word re, which means to do or to repeat. More religion meaning a state or condition. So actually religion actually means to bring back one to its natural state of thinking, back to its natural state of spirituality. Actually, religion is just distorted spirituality. That was first. The religion came from spirituality, African spirituality, I must say.
All right, so let me ask you this. You said that Christ is something that came to you during the REM state. So that's not your birth name, right? So is this a transformation that we've gone through?
Each name, it kind of like the journey, kind of like it's parallel or symbolic to Malcolm's journey in the different nomenclatures and the different names that he possessed or that he had. One name I remember that he had was Satan or something like that. So those are all the names represent his transformation, you know, from the beginning of my stage, during my self-destructive stage. They used to call me Tone Bone, Gito, or Logical, you know. So I went through that incarceration stage. I used to call it rites of passage stage, you know, because majority of black males in the inner cities, that's our rites of passage, you know, going through the prison industrial complex. So the name, Tone Bone, was destroyed. All those other names that identified me as a self-destructive individual of other people's humanity was destroyed, and the name Christ is, hence after that, thereafter, Tony Christ came about, symbolizing my transformation.
All right, so you've made some type of change in your life. What was it that made the change come about? I hear you mention incarceration and you spent some time in prison. Could you, elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. I come from the perspective of a deeper perspective than my prison incarceration, man. Because, you know, some brothers, they too may be up in their pride or society. They too conditioned by society because, you know, this society conditioned men not to express their sentiments, their emotions. Also, they tell men not to cry and stuff like that. So I say that to say that my prison experience is coming from not just a political, social perspective, but an emotional perspective, you know. imagine how it feels to die inside of a cage. You know,
What was it like to be incarcerated? How long were you incarcerated?
actually, I did 2 state bids. The first one was 3 years. I was still self-destructive. I didn't learn anything from 3 years. Came back from the experience from incarceration and preyed upon my own community. And see, that's the thing about prison industrial complex. I say industrial because it's a business. And what it does is it dehumanizes you. And I like to say that, I think I spoke about this in one of my articles that I wrote. I think when I was in college, I wrote an article. And I compared the prison industrial complex to Frankenstein. That's what it does. The prison industrial complex creates Frankenstein monsters. When they create these monsters, let these monsters go in society and let these monsters run loose on their own community. Pardon me, not a community, it's a neighborhood.
Well, why do you say it's not a community? It's a
Because when you have a community, the community is of those individuals who control their own resources, control their own institutions. We don't have none of the institutions. We don't control anything in these neighborhoods and the communities. The whole village concept, the African village concept is that the whole village concept comes from the term communalism. From the communalism, you get the term communism,
Communist.
All that comes from the African village concept. And you hear that term now, it takes a village to raise a child. But the village has come destroyed. The village has got internal strife and conflict going on. But what happens is, and what's going on is that we are so indoctrinated by all these systems, all the 9 areas of existence, that we internalize our frustration on each other. And we forget about who's actually controlling the strings. So it's like that when every time you hear that, like I hear a lot of time these panel discussions, they always say, it's that crabs in the barrel syndrome, but they don't question how did the crabs get in the barrel and who created the barrel in the first place, to get the crabs start pulling each other down, you know? Every time the crowd tend to crawl up when the crabs pull them back down, but there's a whole story that goes along with that.
So let me ask you another question. As we spend time thinking about your time being incarcerated, right? What are your thoughts about the world on the whole?
Oh wow. That's a very in-depth question. I think that humanity existing on this particular third dimension for a particular reason. Everybody has a purpose. I don't think everybody, even, I consider that, my birth has been accidental. My mom freaked off with this idiot, this clown. I don't even know who he is. I wish I knew. I'd probably slap him in his neck. But that's how tight I am about that situation, to help bring a child into this world and abandon him like that. But I think even then, I still believe I have a purpose. That purpose fits into the various human developmental stages that we have to go through. From 12, they saying 12 is the completed or finished number of man or the human being. So in the first stage is 1 to 12. And 12 to what? The next stage is what? 24. The next stage was 36. Those different stages. And within those different stages, you go through the male stage, the boy stage, the man stage. And Naim Akbar, the American psychologist, gave it the name of the 4th stage, the God stage. And these stages also is tantamount to the feminine energy. The female stage, the girl stage, the woman stage, and the queen stage, or the goddess stage. A lot of us, we are stuck in this male stage and the boy stage. So when it comes to a particular age, 35, 25, 50, or something like that, whatever fits the degree you want to call it, you want to say, I'm a grown man now. But yet you have not matured emotionally. You have not matured psychologically. You see, there's different stages. See, I like to say, I went through all those particular stages in my life for a particular reason. I survived a particular reason, because I'm on that level now, that God stage.
Let me ask you this question. I asked you, what was your impression of the world?
Yeah.
If you've been incarcerated for 16 years, how might your perception of the world differ from somebody else's perception who's never been incarcerated?
Yeah, good perspective. I think their perception of the world is a result of conditioning and non-experience or lack of experience, I think we all have the same perspective of the world. I think that because we go through these particular Eurocentric avenues that our perception of the world becomes divided. Because like you tap into your DNA, obviously the DNA is your library. So we tap into that right there. We get all the information that we need to understand the world and our connection to it. So we think that we're separate from the world. We're not. Every particular plant, animal, we're connected to. Every tree, we're connected to. We didn't just study information just by reading books. Reading is the accumulation of knowledge merely. So the way our ancestors also ascertained knowledge was that they went out there and studied nature. They studied nature and then put it into writing, but some of their writing, not all of the writing, but we taught basically from oralism, oral history. Hence, you get the term rap and the signifying and stuff like that from us sitting around like this telling stories.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, so our perception of the world in that sense, and then a metaphysical sense, it's all tantamount, all the same to me. And I think that because we are stuck in this third dimension, I mean, assimilated into this one-dimensional, traditional, Eurocentric, European-dominated aspect of the world is where we all get.
So we're not
misunderstood.
We're not getting a chance to see things the way we see them.
Right.
It's being perpetuated upon us from somebody else.
Right.
Let me ask you something else. I haven't heard you mention this, but where does family fit in all of this? If there's a system or there's something that's controlling the way that we are, how do you view family in this dichotomy?
The family should be on the top of the pyramid, man, with regards to understanding everything, because within the family is where you first understand everything. You first understand love through the family. If you got a male, you got a son already being raised in the family, then his understanding of how to be a brother, how to be a comrade, how to be a soldier, how to be a friend is experienced by who? His father. See? Not by the mother. How you love a woman is experienced by his mother. So if you never had that feminine energy in your life showing you how to love from her perspective, then you're going to grow up most of the time, like a lot of us do, not really knowing and understanding and fathoming what it is and how it truly feels to love a woman. Because we haven't experienced that with our mother. Everything first starts within the family household, and that's why the family structure is being divided now. That welfare system is also a culprit in dividing the black family structure. You know, you build the values within the family, and from that family, it branches off to community. From there, it branches off to society. From there, it branches off to the world.
All right, so if everything should start with the foundation of family, right? Let me ask you this, because I noticed that when we touched on family, you started to become very, very passionate. Is there something going on inside the family that makes you so passionate?
Yeah, man. There's a disconnect, man. We're not just my family, but the whole black family, period, man. Because my mom, mother raised us, man, to be real family-centric, be real family-oriented, you know? And because I've been incarcerated since I was like 14, 15 years old, my first case was a attempt murder case. I grew up really angry. I never really grew up around my family. So when I came out, when I was about, I was in my early 30s when I came out. So I experienced all that, the consequential and important elements that I needed in my young life with family. I missed out on that because I was incarcerated in a dehumanized environment, sadistic environment, learning the ways and actions of a reality I have not known. Nobody even told me about. I hear on the path when sometimes, yo, don't go to this jail, don't go to jail, don't drop your soap, stuff like that. You don't hear about prison. When you actually experience, you're like, wow, all the stuff that you heard comes back to the forefront of your mental. But yeah, because of that, I missed out on that reality. It affects me now, family, you know?
Let me ask you, when you speak about going into prison and family, and how did your family connect while you were in prison or disconnect with you?
My sister wasn't, everybody in my family didn't hold me down. It was my sister, my older sister Cassandra, the homie Jeeters, held me down, and my mother, you know, and that's about it. And it's kind of all I really needed was somebody on the outside to help keep me inspired to continue on, because I've been up in them cages for a lot of years, and I missed a whole lot of years of my boyhood stage and my teenager stage, and I've seen a lot of things. I see a lot of grown men break down, and the things I experienced at 15 years old, I experienced grown men experiencing break down. So I had to be actually a grown man at 14, 15 years old going through these environments. I know that now there's over 2 million individuals, American citizens, incarcerated in the society. Majority of them are African and Latino, black and Latino. And so the reality of that is saying to me that there's an attack, a systematic attack upon my humanity. You know, with that being said, that I'm totally in a state. My total existence is in a state of imprisonment. Even when I so-called became emancipated or manumitted from the prison industrial complex on parole, I still felt imprisoned.
Hold on. You said emancipated.
Yeah.
We know emancipation for connection with slavery. Are you trying to make a connection there?
Yeah, definitely is a connection there. Made the 13th Amendment. You got to read that. About abolition of slavery, except what? Found guilty and found guilty of a crime committed. And you're found guilty of a crime committed, and you sit in that prison industrial complex. You considered what?
A slave.
Comes to 13 minutes. You legally a slave. Yeah.
Did you see the movie 13?
No, I didn't. I just
The movie 13 is about talking about the prison system and how they've made the connection from education into the prison pipeline. It's a very deep movie. But even though you haven't seen it, let me ask you this: what do you think the reason why prison is becoming such a big business, so to speak?
I think because to maintain the control of the population, you know, it's become a big business because they know that by reason of you creating, deliberately and intentionally creating poverty, you're going to have people in that particular environment committing crimes to survive their particular environment. Now, one of the things when I like to speak of when I'm speaking about crime and environment, I like to speak about that nurture versus nature debate. And also, I think I spoke with you one time about this epigenetic thing, with how we are scarred not just emotionally and psychologically from past experiences, but our DNA, the information, that scar is left right there in our DNA. So years down the line, you may experience through they call post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic slave disorder, any type of disorder you experience later on. It's also with our relationship. The brother Dr. Umar Johnson said something very important and consequential when he said that the reason why a lot of our relationships fail is because we come into these relationships with what's called post-traumatic relationship disorder or post-traumatic relationship syndrome. Yeah.
Let me ask you, wrote a book, right? If I'm not mistaken, can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Random Thoughts of a Soulless Child, autobiography of Tony Christ. It was basically chronicling my journey as a self-destructive black male running wild in the streets of uptown Sugar Hill and various areas in the inner cities, to my experience in the prison and stuff like that, and my transformation and utilizing my experience to help some of these youths understand their situation and their reality and what they're going through. And so I hope they don't fall into the same entrapment that I did when I was a young black male without any role models. You know.
All right. I've read your book, and I honestly want to commend you on this book. I think this is one of the more informative books that I've read, and not just because I know you, but this book is very emotional. And right now, what I want to do is I want to read some passages from the book, and I just want you to elaborate and just kind of like walk us through what you were feeling during these moments in time. All right. So, in the book Random Thoughts of a Soulless Child, on page 74, we say, well, you said, my mother's tears broke me down every time, and seeing her break down in that courtroom was one of the most tear-jerking experiences I've ever had to endure. I don't know if it was my mother's tears, their white God, or the judge that had a moment of compassion, but seeing my mother broke down the way she did caused the judge to call a recess.
Yeah, I probably should say this, but seeing a woman cry is my kryptonite. You know, I don't like seeing women cry. You know, I used to always see my mother cry. I mean, she raised 4 of us, and me being the oldest, I really saw some things that she had to endure to put food on the table, to take care of her 4 children. You know, and a lot of times I see her break down and cry in her room and stuff, and every time I see her cry, it broke me down because she was a source of my strength. And seeing a source of my strength breaking down and crying like that, ultimately it was going to affect me. I mean, coming from her womb, 9 months in her womb, you know, ultimately it's going to affect me. So from that experience, it migrated into the total reality of seeing a woman cry and stuff like that. It's like my kryptonite. It's like that. What can I do? And sometimes it hurts even more when you see them crying. You can't do anything about it. You know. So when that situation happened, you know, I'm trying to maintain some equanimity, some balance, some peace, some strength. Trying to exhibit it in my behavior, my character. Trying to be strong. You know, not just for family, for even these, you know, idiots that may be watching on the outside and want to try me and want to see a sign of weakness in that cage. That's what goes on in prison. So when they see a sign of weakness, they think in you and want to try to test you. So my mentality in the back of my mind, in the forefront of my mind, I was like, I'm not showing none of these clowns any sign of weakness. So when I see my mother break down and cry, it was like, oh, wow. You know, at the same time, I'm trying not to break down into tears by seeing her. But I don't know, some things that you experience, man, and unconditional experience like that with regards to love with a mother and a son, you know, is uncontrollable. So I just broke down.
Well, what was the relationship like with you and your mom?
Oh man, I can't even explain it. I can't really explain it, man. So I never knew my father, so everything I kind of went to my father. I would go to this idiot for questions, and I went to my mother. You know, the things she couldn't answer, I kind of had to learn the hard way through trial and error, through my imprisonment or through some brothers that I met throughout my incarceration, like some elder brothers, particularly my mentor who trained me, my boxing mentor who trained me for the boxing team in Sing Sing. You know, I looked at him like as an elder brother, as an elder figure for me to learn from.